My husband has won a great victory and is returning home with his army. When the emperor was bestowing rewards for meritorious service, he said he wished to use all his military achievements to secure a position as a concubine for his cousin in the palace. Lady Jhan is my half-sister. She has been in the palace for several years, yet she remains merely a lady. The emperor immediately suspected him of having an affair with consort Jhan, though he said nothing openly. 6 months later he exiled the entire Jhan family on charges of dereliction of duty. On the day Lady Jhan was sentenced to death, my husband clamped his hand tightly around my throat. If you hadn't stolen Jhan's marriage and sent her deep into the palace, how could she have suffered such a fate? It wasn't until my last breath that I realized Jhan had always been in love with my half-sister, Jhan. He blamed our entire family for breaking up his relationship with Jhan. The Jhan family's blood ran like a river, and countless souls were left to wander in torment. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day I was betrothed to Jhan. This time, I decided to let him have his way. Main text. General Yunhu has come to ask for your hand in marriage. Miss, please wake up. The maid Liu whispered in my ear. I opened my eyes to find that I had been reborn back to the day my fiancé, Jhan, came to ask for my hand in marriage. I sat up. The engagement wasn't finalized yet. There was still time to change things. Jhan sat in the flower hall, but his gaze drifted out the window. In the rear garden in the distance, his half-sister Jhan, dressed in a moon-white brocade gown, was picking winter jasmine. She looked like a fairy in the snow, her beauty breathtaking. When Lady Xia saw me, she took my hand and said, "Jhan has grown so much. It's true that a girl changes a lot as she grows up, so lovely and charming now. She's just the kind of girl a man should take home and pamper." I smiled shyly. "Jhan isn't as pretty as you, sister. The suitors who've come to ask for your hand have practically worn out the threshold of our house. In my previous life, Jhan married me at his parents' behest. Yet his heart remained with Jhan so much so that he even came to hate the Jhan family. This time, I will help him fulfill that wish." Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of jealousy in Jhan's eyes. He was clenching his fists tightly, as if struggling to suppress his emotions. After hearing what I had to say, my father and mother laughed as they spoke. Suddenly, a cry rang out from the distance, and Jhan stumbled into a snowdrift. Before anyone could react, Jhan had already rushed forward, scooped Jhan into his arms, and, disregarding all propriety between the sexes, carried her into the flower hall. Mother's face turned ashen, and the old lady didn't look happy either. Jhan's eyes were red and teary, and she leaned against Jhan's chest, her hands clutching his shirt collar tightly, looking like a frightened little deer. "General, please let me down. Today is the joyous occasion of your engagement to your sister. Jhan is fine. I'll just go back to my room to apply some ointment and I'll be all right." As she finished speaking, tears streamed down her face, making her look all the more pitiful. Jhan clasped her hand tightly and said firmly, "Jhan, don't be afraid. I'll protect you." After saying this, he turned and knelt before my parents. "Please, uncle and aunt, grant me Jhan's hand in marriage. I promise to cherish her dearly, make her my lawful wife, never take a concubine for the rest of my life, and remain devoted to her alone for the rest of our days." Jhan covered her mouth in surprise, looked at me timidly, and hurriedly said, "General, the one you're meant to marry is my younger sister. She is the legitimate daughter of the Marquis's household. I'm not worthy of you. Please don't say any more." My father glared at him sternly. "General Xia, do you realize what you're saying?" Jhan looked up and said, "I know Jhan is the legitimate daughter, which is why you betrothed her to me, but Jhan is the older sister. She hasn't even married yet. How can she let her younger sister get ahead of her? Or is it that, because she's marrying into the general's household, you've passed the marriage off to my younger sister, leaving Jhan to bear this injustice alone? How noble and righteous." Lady Xia slammed her hand on the table. "Jhan, what nonsense are you spouting? This marriage was personally bestowed by the emperor and arranged by your father and the Marquis. How dare you be so picky?" Jhan, however, would not back down. But it is Jhan I love, though she is a daughter of a concubine. She is still the eldest daughter of the Marquis's household. Why is she always so cautious whenever I see her? In this household, all the best things belong to Jhan. You have never truly cared for Jhan, but I genuinely cherish her and wish to marry her as my lawful wife. Jhan and I are deeply in love. I implore the Marquis and his wife to grant us their blessing. My father retorted angrily. Your marriage to Jhan has already been reported to the emperor. Now you wish to call it off and marry Jhan instead. How is Jhan ever supposed to show her face in public after this? Her mother clutched her chest. Mutual affection. Jhan, since when have you and General Yunhui been in love? Do you have any idea how much this would disgrace the Jhan family if word got out? I stepped forward, walked up to Xiaozheng, and looked at him intently. General Xia, you may marry my sister if you wish, but you cannot make baseless accusations and spread rumors that the Marquis mansion mistreats her. With which idea you see us mistreat her? She wears brocade from Yunnan. Her shoes are made of shoe brocade, and the ruby hairpin in her hair was crafted by mother using her own dowry. I ask you, what legitimate mother would take such care of her concubine's daughter? Xiaozheng was at a loss for words, then said, what about the marriage? She hasn't even been betrothed yet. How come it's fallen to you, her younger sister, to get married? I was so angry I could have laughed. Does he really think he's some kind of prize catch? If it weren't for the old general saving my father's life all those years ago. Even if the Xie family had gone before the emperor to ask for his blessing for this marriage, my father might not have agreed. It was the old general who decided to ask for the eldest daughter's hand in marriage. Seeing him like this, I didn't feel like saying another word. I simply picked up the marriage contract from the table and said, Madam, my marriage to Xiaozheng is hereby called off. Since he wishes to marry my elder sister, I shall gladly grant his wish. The general and I were already betrothed. Yet you've been seeing my sister behind my back. You clearly have no regard for our family, and Jhan cannot condone such behavior. Jhan immediately spoke up. Sister, this marriage was meant for you in the first place. I am merely a concubine's daughter. How could I dare to take your place? She looked pitiful, but the smugness in her eyes was impossible to hide. I smiled, waved the marriage contract in my hand, and said pointedly, Sister, are you really going to turn down such a wonderful match? If you do, I won't back out of this engagement. Jhan felt anxious and bit her lower lip as she looked at Xiaozheng. Of course she wanted him. Xiaozheng came from a military family and had been appointed general of the Cloud Banner at a young age. He was the object of countless noble young women's romantic fantasies. Besides, she had no better option. Xiaozheng looked at her tear-stained face, stepped forward, and took her hand. Jhan, I know you have feelings for me. Why hold back? I promise to treat you well and never let you suffer. Trust me. Jhan threw herself into his arms and choked out. But what will people say about me? They're bound to gossip and call me shameless for stealing my younger sister's fiancé. Xiaozheng held her close. What is there to fear from what people say? I've got everything under control. Just tell everyone it was my fault. News of the broken engagement between the legitimate daughter of the Nanchang Marquis and the general of the Cloud Banner, as well as Xiaozheng's decision to call off the marriage and marry a concubine's daughter instead, quickly spread throughout the capital. Overnight, I became the laughingstock of high society. I was outshone by my half-sister and had my engagement broken off in public, completely ruining my reputation. Your father shouldn't have agreed to this marriage in the first place, her mother said, grinding her teeth in anger. I tried to comfort my mother. Mom, a man who's so indecisive isn't worth entrusting your life to, nor is he worth your heartache. If I were to marry him, it would ruin my whole life. Just as they were speaking, Jhan's voice came from outside. Little sister, I've come to apologize to you. It's all my fault that you've been subjected to so much criticism. Whether you wish to punish me or beat me, I will accept it without complaint. No sooner had she finished speaking than a gasp went through the room, and the maid shrieked, Miss, it's freezing out here. You're so frail, how can you possibly stand it? Second young lady. Please forgive our first young lady. This servant bows before you, with all the commotion outside the courtyard. I stepped out and watched Shinwaner put on her act with a cold gaze. To play the victim. She didn't even put on her overcoat. Her face was frozen purple. And her teeth were chattering. Since my sister has apologized so sincerely, it would be petty of me not to accept it. I carried the brazier and walked over slowly. Seeing her face turn pale, I said slowly, "But what can we do? Sister has gone to such great lengths to put on a show for Xiaojing, but he can't come today. He's been punished by his father to kneel in the ancestral hall for 3 days now. He was supposed to come today to present you with the betrothal gifts, but I'm afraid we'll have to reschedule." I leaned close to her. "Even if you were to kneel here until you die today, your Xiaolang would never see you. Why don't you wait until the day he presents his betrothal gifts to come and kneel? That way, he'll really feel for you." As soon as I spoke, Shinwaner froze. With tears in her eyes and a trembling voice, she said, "I don't understand what you're saying, little sister." Just as she was thinking this, concubine who rushed in from outside and threw her arms around Shinwaner. "Second young lady, if you must punish someone, punish me instead. Waner is frail. If you're angry with her, why did you give up the marriage in the first place? As the legitimate daughter of the Ho family, you can have any marriage you want. Why compete with your sister?" Just then, Shinwaner's personal maid rushed in, carrying Xiaojing, who was covered in wounds. "General, please save our young mistress. She's been made to kneel as punishment and is freezing to death." Xiaojing's face was covered in bruises. It was clear he had been severely punished by the old general. He must have rushed over after Shinwaner's maid went ahead to the general's mansion to warn him. Seeing Waner kneeling on the ground, Xiaojing was consumed with rage. He scooped her up in his arms and glared at me fiercely. "Shin Qinger, you have such a cruel heart. Waner is, after all, your own sister. Are you really going to drive her to her death just because of a marriage arrangement?" I shouted sternly. "Someone, get him out of here." Does the Marquis of Nanchang's mansion allow just any outsider to barge in whenever they please? Her mother grew even angrier and came out of the room. "Drag that slutty maid who let a stranger into the house out of here and give her 20 lashes. Shinwaner's maid was dragged away on the spot. Before she could even cry out for help, she was taken to the outer courtyard to be executed. I pointed at Shinwaner. "I drove her to her death. Do I have that kind of power? She's the one who knelt here playing the victim. What? Now you want to pin the blame for mistreating my half-sister on me?" Shinwaner shook her head vigorously, struggling to free herself from Xiaojing's embrace, and said, "I chose to kneel on my own. It's not my sister's fault." The concubine cried out, "Second young lady, you are the legitimate daughter. Whatever you wish to do, our Waner has always done nothing but obey." My mother stepped forward, ready to explode, but I quickly stopped her and took a step forward. "Mistreating a concubine's daughter, Auntie, in the more than 10 years you've been in this Marquis' mansion, I doubt you've ever known what it's like to be mistreated by the mistress of the house. Today, I'll grant your wish and show you exactly what mistreatment means." With that, I slapped Shinwaner hard across the face. "That's what you call mistreatment?" My mother was furious. She wanted nothing more than to kick all 3 of them out. "Didn't you hear what the young lady said? From today onward, there will be a distinction between legitimate and illegitimate daughters. The eldest daughter's allowance will be cut in half, and half of her servants will be dismissed. As an illegitimate daughter, she is unworthy of such generous treatment. As for concubine who, there's no need to give her special treatment. She's to be treated just like the other concubines. If she wants anything else, she can buy it with her own money." Xiaojing tried to argue, but his mother cut him off. "If you can't bear to part with her, then take Shinwaner home today. Treat her like a queen, and pamper her however you like. If you can't do that, then get out of my Marquis' mansion." Shinwaner, her face deathly pale, curled up in Xiaojing's arms and clung weakly to his neck. "General, save me." Xiaojing held Shinwaner tightly in his arms and glared at me. "I'm taking Waner away. If I leave her here in the mansion, who knows how much more suffering she'll have to endure." Chin Chinger. If you hate me for breaking off our engagement, take it out on Nui pick on a defenseless woman. I laughed in exasperation. The Shin family has raised Shinwaner all these years, providing her with seasonal gifts and daily necessities all exactly the same as what I receive. How can you say they've treated her harshly? In that case, take her with you today. But sister, if a man pays a dowry, you become his wife. If he elopes with you, you become his concubine. If you insist on leaving, I'm afraid father won't let you off the hook, Xia Xing declared emphatically. As the wife of General Yun Hui, who dares to refuse her? I will take her back with me today, since you refuse to acknowledge her as your daughter. I see no reason to acknowledge the Yu family either. From this day forward, Waner has nothing to do with you. With that, he picked up Shinwaner and carried her out of the mansion. Concubine who tilted her head back smugly. My Waner is now the general's wife who would dare look down on her. My mother looked at Concubine who with a stern expression. Concubine who, you have shown disrespect to your superior. Take her away and throw her into the ancestral hall, where she is to receive 20 slaps across the face and be made to kneel for 3 days. From now on, she is confined to the spring brocade pavilion and is not to leave without my orders. Concubine who shouted, How dare you lay a hand on me? I am General Yunhui's own mother-in-law. The general will surely see justice done for me. My mother snorted coldly. Mother-in-law, you, a lowly servant girl, dare to call yourself a mother-in-law. Servants, take the concubinesses ill to the family temple to recuperate properly. This illness will likely not be cured in less than a year or two. Just as Concubine who was about to speak, someone covered her mouth and dragged her away. General Xiaxing of the Cloud Banner caused quite a stir at the Nanchang Marquis' mansion, personally carrying the eldest daughter, Shinwaner, out of the house, which immediately sent the whole town into an uproar. In order to secure a proper status for Shinwaner, Xiaxing entered the palace the following day, knelt before the emperor, and requested that the Marquis' household grant Shinwaner the status of a legitimate daughter, allowing her to marry in style. Upon hearing this, my father remained completely unmoved. Your Majesty, this betrothal was originally arranged between General Xia and myself. A few days ago, the Xia family came to our door making a scene, and we have already broken off the engagement. I, Shinwaner, an unfilial daughter, disobeyed my parents' wishes and eloped with a man of another family without permission. I feel deeply ashamed. Yesterday, I opened the ancestral hall and removed Shinwaner from the family register. From now on, she is no longer a member of the Shin family. Xia Zheng, how you and Shinwaner choose to marry is your own business. But please don't drag the Nanchang Marquis' household into it. The emperor had long since grown tired of dealing with this nonsense. Yet Xia Zheng still had the nerve to bring it before his majesty. He waved his hand and said to his father, You should handle your own family affairs yourself. When the news broke, Lady Xia was so enraged that she fainted. Upon learning that Xia Xing had taken Shinwaner to the Xia family's villa, she went there and caused quite a commotion. Xia Xing, however, paid it no mind. Upon returning to his mansion, he opened the storehouse and kept everyone both inside and outside running around like headless chickens, insisting that he would give Shinwaner the most grand wedding possible. He also secretly sought out an official from the Imperial Astronomical Bureau to select an auspicious date. Once everything was settled, he took Shinwaner to various shops throughout the capital to help her put together her dowry, which included everything from jewelry to clothing. Xiaxing clasped Shinwaner's hand tightly and vowed, Rest assured, I will never let you suffer any injustice. The Shin family may have rejected you, but I want you. I will prepare a dowry for you, a procession of 10 miles of red, and you will enter the general's mansion in all its splendor. Shinwaner threw herself into his arms, overcome with emotion. Xia Lang, you are the kindest person in the world to me. Apart from you, Waner has no one else to turn to. When I heard the news, I couldn't help but laugh. One had been cast out of his family, and the other was a lone warrior. Did they really think that just by being together, they could overcome every obstacle? In my previous life, shortly after we were married, Xiaxing left for the frontier and rarely returned. But every month, He would have someone bring things back to the estate. And in each letter he would instruct me to take these treasures to the palace and give them to my half-sister. He said, "Your sister has no one to rely on in the palace. She's in a difficult situation. We should help her as much as we can." I thought he was just taking a liking to her because of his feelings for me. But in the end, I realized that the person he had liked all along was Shinwaner. In this life, I'll grant him his wish and let them stay together forever. I'm curious to see just how long his so-called fidelity will last. In order to help the Xie family accept Shinwaner, Xiaxing made a point of bringing her along to the birthday celebration of his aunt, the Countess of Kongning. Just so everyone knows, Waner is the one who holds a special place in his heart. At the entrance to the Kongning mansion, just as Xiaxing was about to help Shinwaner out of the palanquin, a woman dressed in red riding attire galloped up on horseback. She had a strikingly handsome, almost masculine beauty. She was Zhao Ying, the legitimate daughter of the Duke of Jhan. Before the two of them had a chance to react, she had already dismounted and was greeting Xiaxing warmly. "Brother Zheng, is this the bride you're going to marry? With a background like that, how could she possibly be a match for you?" Shinwaner's face flushed red, and her eyes filled with tears. "Who is this young lady?" Zhao Ying tilted her chin. "I am Zhao Ying, the legitimate daughter of the Duke of Jhan. I've known Brother Zheng since childhood. Didn't you say you were going to marry Shinqinger? How did you suddenly switch to a concubine's daughter? Stealing your own little sister's wedding, that takes some skill." I had originally thought that since the two families had already arranged a marriage, it wouldn't be proper for me to come between them. But now that the engagement has been called off, Miss Shin, let's compete on equal terms. The commotion at the entrance drew a crowd of onlookers. Seeing Shinwaner at a loss for words, everyone fell silent. When Shinwaner saw me in the crowd, she looked over at me with tear-filled eyes. "Sister, are you just going to stand by and watch others bully the Shin family? She's quite something trying to drag me into this." I smiled gently. "Miss Waner, choose your words carefully. I have no sister who eloped. I told you this back when you left the estate with Xiaxing without a matchmaker or a dowry. Your name isn't in the Shin family genealogy. So I advise you not to get me involved." Miss Zhao is straightforward by nature. What's wrong with her standing up for the person she loves? Since you and Xiaxing have neither been betrothed by your parents nor matched by a matchmaker. Miss Zhao's words are entirely reasonable. Shinwaner bit her lip and looked at Zhao Ying defiantly. "Miss Zhao, Xia Lang has said that I will be his only wife in this lifetime. He will not take a concubine, nor will he have any other woman. Our wedding is in 3 months. I'll invite you to join us for a toast then." Zhao Ying chuckled and turned to enter the mansion, saying as she walked, "Fine. Then let's see who Brother Zheng ends up marrying. I've heard a lot about this Zhao Ying. She's spent years accompanying her father at the frontier, has a fiery temper, and has known Zhao Jing since childhood. In her previous life, she had remained unmarried for many years for Xiaxing's sake, and in the end, she ended up becoming an old maid. She's been clinging to Xiaxing for years, setting countless traps for me, and even causing me to have a miscarriage. No one knows her temperament better than I do. On the day I was reborn, I had someone send her an anonymous message informing her that Xiaxing had called off the engagement. Just in time to join the commotion, the Lady of Shaning, acting as hostess, heard the commotion at the door and hurried out to greet them. When she saw that Xiaxing had brought Shinwaner with him, she shot him a withering glance. Then, ignoring the other two as if they weren't there, he wrapped his arm affectionately around Zhao Ying and walked inside. "Inger, you're here. Your aunt from the Xie family just mentioned you a moment ago, wondering why you hadn't returned to the capital yet." What a coincidence. Shinwaner stood there frozen. Seeing that no one was paying her any attention, she awkwardly wiped away her tears. Xiaxing quickly pulled her into his arms, spoke softly to comfort her, and they entered the mansion together. I thought today's commotion was over, but I never expected that the real excitement was yet to come. In the garden at the back of the hall, I sat with a few noble women I knew well, sipping tea and chatting. Zhao Ying sat in the pavilion across the way, sipping some freshly brewed peach blossom wine. A maidservant brought her some hot tea to help sober her up. But as she approached, she slipped and spilled the tea, soaking Zhao Ying's clothes. The young girl turned pale with fear. "I didn't mean to do it. Miss, please spare my life." Zhao Ying frowned as she looked at her soaked clothes and snapped, "Hurry up and take me to change." The young girl quickly stood up and led the way. "This way, miss." In the guest room of the side hall, the stove was burning and incense was burning, creating a drowsy atmosphere. Zhao Ying finally caught her breath and slowly began to undress. But suddenly a figure appeared from behind the screen. It was Xiaxing. Xiaxing was startled to see Zhao Ying with her clothes half exposed. Just as he was about to step back, Zhao Ying's eyes sparkled, and she leaned softly toward him. "Brother Zheng." The plum blossoms at the Earl of Shanning's residence were in full bloom. Xiaxing's cousin, the third young lady of the Earl of Shanning's household, noticed that everyone was feeling a bit chilly as they stood there enjoying the breeze and admiring the flowers. She suggested, "The side hall of the warm pavilion faces the garden directly. It has stained glass windows that offer a view of the garden. It's both warm and delightful." Upon hearing this, the group followed their host to the side hall. But before they even reached the door, a suggestive sound drifted out from inside, causing the noble ladies to widen their eyes in surprise. Seeing this, the third young lady flushed crimson and kicked the door open. "Who dares to engage in such lewd behavior in the Shanning Marquis' mansion? Have you no shame?" The door was kicked open violently, and the people who stepped inside were still naked and entangled with one another. Someone screamed, "Ah! It's General Yunhui and Zhao Ying." Zhao Ying just cried as she hid in Xiaxing's arms. "Brother Zheng." Xiaxing turned pale and hurriedly grabbed his cloak to wrap Zhao Ying in it. "No, it's not like that. It's all a misunderstanding. Someone must have used a sleeping potion to trick us." Incense. Everyone looked at the incense burner. But the incense inside had long since burned out. There was no trace of it left. Xinwaner stepped out from behind the crowd and, upon seeing this, instantly broke down. "You shameless woman. You'd actually do something so disgraceful just to marry Xialang." She screamed and rushed forward, trying to attack Zhao Ying. But Xiaxing stopped her. "Waner, you mustn't do this. Inger has been drugged." Xinwaner burst into tears and confronted Xiaxing. "How could you do such a thing? You promised you'd marry only me for the rest of your life. How could you make love to another woman?" Caught off guard, Xiaxing had several bloody scratches left on his face. Zhao Ying immediately lost her temper and slapped him across the face. "Who do you think you are? Laying a hand on me?" The three of them were in a tussle, and the third young lady didn't know which way to turn. She was all flustered for a while until her father finally came to the rescue. When the ladies arrived and saw the scene, their vision went black, and they nearly fainted. The Duchess of Xingguo was utterly devastated, with Zhao Ying as her only daughter, whom she cherished dearly. She could not bear such an injustice. With a stern expression, she pulled the Lady of Shokong and Lady Xia aside, insisting that they provide an explanation. This matter is shrouded in mystery, and it is no longer clear who started it. Xiaxing knew he'd been tricked. But what could he do? This was his own aunt's birthday banquet, and yet something like this had happened. Zhao Ying was the Duke of Zhen's pride and joy. If he didn't give her a proper explanation, the Duke would likely have him skinned alive. The Duke of Zhen and his wife looked grim. "If this matter is not resolved today, I shall have no choice but to go before His Majesty and seek justice. As the legitimate daughter of the Duke of Zhen, I can only be a primary wife. I will never be a concubine." No sooner had he finished speaking than he turned to leave. But Lady Xia and the Countess of Shanning hurried to stop him. "Your Excellency and Lady, rest assured, we will come to your residence tomorrow to present the betrothal gifts." Xinwaner screamed, "No way. I'm the legitimate wife." Ever since she entered the house, the Duchess of Zhen had never taken Xinwaner seriously. She let out a cold laugh. "Who do you think you are? Since when did you become the legitimate wife? Has he even proposed? Have the 3 letters and 6 rights been exchanged? She's nothing more than a kept woman the Xia family keeps on the side, and yet she dares to speak so boldly in front of my daughter. Once Inger takes her place as the mistress of the household, allowing you to be a concubine will already be a great favor." Lady Xia and the Countess of Shanning quickly agreed. The Duke of Jhan's household wielded immense influence, and since Xia Jing had become intimate with Zhao Wing, the old General Xia issued an ultimatum. If Xia Jing did not marry Miss Zhao, the Xia family would no longer acknowledge him as their son. Xia Jing had no choice. No matter how much he loved Shenhuaner, he had to accept this match and marry Zhao Wing. In the end, with no other choice, they agreed that Zhao Wing would be the primary wife. Xia Jing wanted to secure the status of a secondary concubine for Shenhuaner, but was once again harshly scolded by Lady Xia. What kind of family is the Zhao family? And you still want to take a concubine? That Shenhuaner someone who would Ella Pecan possibly be a decent woman. Giving her the title of a secondary wife is already doing her a favor. After returning to the annex, Shenhuaner wept her heart out. Xia Lang, I don't want to be a concubine. You promised to marry me as your primary wife. Xia Yuanzhou could only offer this consolation. No matter whom I marry as my primary wife, in my heart, you will always be my wife. Since Ying comes from the Duke of Jhan's household, there is absolutely no way she could ever be a concubine. I'm afraid you'll have to put up with this. Once you bear me a child, I'll make you my cow-wife. Is that all right? Don't worry. Marrying her is just for Shou Yuri, the only one in my heart. When I heard that Xia Jing was going to marry both Zhao Wing and Shenhuaner, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Shenhuaner is a master at playing the victim, while Zhao Wing has been spoiled since childhood. In our past life, she never gave her legitimate wife the time of day. Let alone Shenhuaner, who is merely a concubine. The Xia family is in for quite a show. When the day of the wedding finally arrived, the Duke of Jhan's household, in an effort to dispel the rumors of recent days, prepared an extravagant dower so lavish that even the phrase 10 miles of red could not begin to describe it. Even with the things Xia Jing had bought for her, Shenhuaner couldn't match this kind of grandeur. The Xia family was hosting a grand wedding celebration to welcome the eldest daughter of the Duke of Jhan, and Shenhuaner, as a concubine, was carried out of the guest quarters and was to enter the mansion through the side gate. But no sooner had her palanquin and dowry been carried out of the side courtyard than they were stopped in the street, and Shenhuaner tumbled out of the wedding palanquin. Someone gasped, "Oh my! A concubine is allowed to wear red. Isn't that a disgrace to the Duke of Jhan's household? The legitimate wife is getting married, and she's dressed like that. What on earth is she up to?" The matron of the Duke of Jhan's mansion waved her hand. "The mistress has ordered that concubine should be given a change of clothes." Then, in front of everyone, he stripped her of her wedding gown, dressed her in a garish magenta outfit, and shoved her into the palanquin. "You should know your place, concubine." Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Shenhuaner was carried through the side gate of the Xia family's rear courtyard and into the mansion. She sat desolately in her stepmother's courtyard, listening to the sounds of celebration coming from the main hall. The lively ceremony where Xia Jing and Zhao Wing were exchanging vows. It had nothing to do with her. Her maid complained from the side. "Miss, how could the general treat you so badly?" Shenhuaner stroked her belly and said softly, "Xia Ling was also forced into this by the Duke of Jhan's household. Once I give birth to this child, I'm sure we'll have our chance to turn things around." On their wedding night, just as the newlyweds were drinking the ceremonial cup of wine, a maidservant burst in, crying, "General, concubine Shen is in pain and has started bleeding. The servants won't let us call a doctor. Please go see to her at once." As soon as Xia Jing heard this, he threw his wine cup to the ground and rushed straight to her courtyard. "You good for nothing. Hurry up and go get a doctor." Left alone on the wedding bed, Zhao Wing gritted her teeth and said, "That Shenhuaner, how dare she humiliate me today? I'll make her pay 100-fold. Before long, word came that Shenhuaner was pregnant. Fearing the pregnancy might be unstable, Xia Jing stayed by her side all night long. Zhao Wing smashed the bridal chamber to smithereens and spent her wedding night all alone. The next day, after presenting tea to the old general and his wife, she returned to the courtyard, where Shenhuaner came to present tea to the mistress. Xia Jing accompanied her inside, but Zhao Wing showed no sign of anger. She simply said, "My lord, please hurry to court. The concubine's pregnancy is a matter for the inner quarters. Once the child is born, I will be the child's legal mother. You really think I would treat her harshly?" After saying this, he drank the tea that Shinwaner had offered him right in front of Xiaojing, and even presented her with a set of extremely valuable jewelry. Seeing that his wife and concubines were getting along harmoniously, Xiaojing felt completely at ease and went to court. No sooner had he stepped out than Zhaoying took her seat at the head of the table, picked up her teacup, and said contemptuously, "What a feat getting pregnant before you've even walked through the door." Shinwaner placed a hand on her belly as she looked at her. "It's all thanks to my husband's deep love. He said he'll only have me bear his children. Please rest assured, madam, when the child is born, he'll call you mother and show you respect." Zhao Ying let out a cold laugh. "Just the son of an adulteress and you dare call me mother." With that, she waved her hand. "Someone, bring in the medicine prepared for the concubine." As soon as she finished speaking, the old nurse walked over carrying a bowl of pitch-black medicine. Shinwaner screamed, "What are you trying to do? I'm carrying the general's child, how dare you?" Zhao Ying said casually, "This is a gift from mother, concubine Shin. Surely you don't really think the Xie family will let you get away with your misdeeds." Confusion over the distinction between legitimate and illegitimate children is the root of family discord. Mother sees right through your schemes. In what family is there an eldest son born out of wedlock before the legitimate heir has even been born? You committed adultery before marriage and became pregnant out of wedlock, bringing shame upon the general's household. Today, I shall set things right. Attendants, force feed this to the concubine. She downed a bowl of strong herbal medicine, and within an hour, Shinwaner passed her meconium. None of the Xie family elders said a word. When Xiaojing returned that evening, Shinwaner was weeping her heart out, begging him to stand up for her and the child. Xiaojing went to confront Zhaoying, only to be grilled by her in return. Is the general intending to favor the concubine and neglect the wife? For a concubine and the legitimate wife to enter the household on the same day is already a disgrace to the Duke of Jhan's mansion. On the wedding night, you left the legitimate wife to sleep alone in an empty room, while you committed premarital adultery with the concubine and fathered a child with her. In every single instance, in what way has she been wronged? My lord, please don't forget that my father is the Grand Marshal of the army. You haven't even secured your position as General of the Cloud Banner yet. If you offend him, I'm afraid even my intercession won't be enough." Those words left Xiaojing speechless. Because of the incident on their wedding night, the Duke of Jhan was even more annoyed with Xiaojing and punished him by assigning him several menial tasks. It was true that he liked Shinwaner, but the Xie family had weak foundations and could never stand up to the Duke of Jhan's household. If their relationship with the Duke of Jhan's household were to turn from an alliance of marriage into enmity, the costs would likely far outweigh the benefits. Ever since Shinwaner lost her child, Zhaoying has shed her former feisty demeanor and has treated Xiaojing with the tenderness of a lover. Xiaojing also mended his relationship with the Zhao family, and with the support of the Duke of Jhan, he gradually began to build up a network of connections. Only now did he understand why his father had arranged for her to marry into the Nancheng Marquis' household all those years ago, and why he had made her marry the Marquis' legitimate daughter. Compared to the prosperity of his family, his little romantic escapades were practically insignificant. All he could do was comfort Shinwaner. "You're still young. Once you've recovered, you can always have another child. The lady comes from the house of the Prince Regent. She is a noble woman of distinguished lineage. Unless you provoke her, she won't go out of her way to cause you trouble." Only now does Shinwaner realize her mistake. Once a woman is married, if she loses the support of her family of origin, she truly has nowhere to turn. As soon as she felt a little better, she rushed back to the Shin family estate, removed her hairpin as a sign of repentance, knelt before the mansion, and begged her father to seek justice for her. "Father, Wanner knows she was wrong. I am your own flesh and blood. How can you bear to see me humiliated like this? Please speak to the general and ask him to grant me the status of a cowwife. Zhaoying is ruthless. If I remain a concubine, she will torment me to death." Her father didn't even step outside. He simply sent word to her that, from the day she eloped with Xiaojing, the Shin family no longer considered her their daughter. If she continued to cause trouble, they would hand her over to the authorities. She knelt at the gate of the home mansion for a full day, but no one came to open the door for her. As dusk fell, I was returning from a palace banquet with my mother when I happened to run into her. With the imperial selection approaching, the Empress Dowager had hosted a small gathering at Sinaying Palace to meet in advance with several noble young ladies she held in high regard. My mother took this palace banquet very seriously. She brought out her finest treasures and piled them on me. Wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I looked like a divine consort. When Shinwaner saw me get out of the car, a flash of hatred crossed her eyes, and she shrieked, "Are you satisfied now, little sister? You must be gloating inside." Seeing me reduced to a concubine, I snorted derisively. "You eloped with someone. If father hadn't expelled you from the family registry, I'm afraid none of the Shin family's daughters would have been able to hold their heads up. Now that you've become a concubine, it's entirely of your own free will. Didn't you say that Xiaojin loved only you, and that the two of you would be together for the rest of your lives? And what happened in the end? It's a shame you gave up everything for him, only to find that you couldn't even keep the child." As soon as I finished speaking, I saw a flash in Shinwaner's eyes, and she clenched her fists. "Chin Chinger, you think I'm a laughingstock? Just you wait and see. I am going to win. Once I become the lady of the general's mansion, I'll rub it in your faces." After hearing this, my mother shook her head and pulled me inside. "Chinger, she's a stranger. Why bother with her?" Since Shinwaner had suffered a miscarriage, her health had been poor, so Xiaojing took up residence in the main courtyard and consummated his marriage with Zhao Ying. Over the next few days, they appeared to be a loving couple. Within a few months, Zhao Ying was found to be pregnant, and the general's mansion was filled with joy. After all, this was the general's legitimate son and the Duke of Jhan's own grandson. His future was sure to be bright. Influenced by this excitement, Xiaojing spent every day with Zhao Ying, and gifts poured into the main courtyard like a stream. The entire household was eagerly awaiting the birth of the child. Zhao Ying looked at Shinwaner, who appeared haggard as she came to pay her respects, and smiled calmly. "You need not worry, concubine. Though I am now with child, there are others to attend to my husband." Shinwaner's eyes lit up, but Zhao Ying continued, "This is Chun Ji, the maid in my dowry. She had her face shaved yesterday and consummated her marriage with the general. The general is very pleased with how well she has served him. He specifically said there's no need to wait for her to become pregnant. She'll be made a concubine right away. From now on, you two are sisters, so you must get along well. When the time comes, whoever among you gives birth to a child will receive a reward from me. However, since concubine Chen hasn't fully recovered yet, let concubine Chen attend to my husband for the next few months." This was a clear and unmistakable way of telling her that the promise Xiaojing had made to her was nothing but a joke. Shinwaner lowered her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes. Waner understands. I will definitely get along well with Sister Chuanji from now on." Even so, Xiaojing hadn't forgotten Waner. That evening, he went to Shinwaner's courtyard. After all, she had once been the apple of his eye. She simply leaned against him and wept. "Waner does not ask for your undivided affection, my lord. I only ask that you visit me now and then. Drink a bowl of the soup I've simmered for you just to show that you remember my feelings." It was rare for Xiaojing to see her so gentle and gracious, so how could he refuse? For more than half the month, he would come to her courtyard to sit and chat. The election had barely begun when news arrived from the Shin family that Zhao Ying had suffered a miscarriage. I wasn't paying much attention at the time. It was only later that Liu explained it all to me in detail. Zhao Ying was 3 months pregnant when she suddenly suffered a miscarriage. After a thorough investigation, it turned out that the safflower mixed into the pastry Xiaojing bought for her every day was to blame. The Duke of Jhan's household was furious, and through ruthless measures, they finally uncovered the truth. It turned out that Shinwaner had heard that Xiaojing bought pastries for Zhao Ying every day, so she begged him to buy some for her too. She bribed someone in the kitchen to switch the 2 pastries she had, and after eating them day after day, Zhao Ying had a miscarriage. She thought her plan was foolproof, and believed that once the incident occurred, the Zhao family would only blame Xiaojing and would never trace it back to her. Little did they know that, in the hands of the Duchess of Jhan, these tactics were child's play. It took her less than a day to get to the bottom of the matter. Zhao Wing is already a member of the Xie family. Stirring up trouble over this matter again won't accomplish anything. Lady Xie intended to punish Shenwan'er according to family law. But Xiaxing fought tooth and nail to stop her. Zhao Wing listened from inside the room, clenching her fists, already filled with murderous intent. The next time I heard news of the Xie family was in the Jianzhou Hall within the palace. After the imperial election, I was first granted the title of consort Shu. The emperor often spent the night in my chambers. One day, he sighed as he looked at me and said, "The family of the Duke of Jhan has been accusing General Yunhui of embezzling military rations, selling official positions and titles, and colluding with foreign powers. This has been going on for 3 days now. To think that what were once such good in-laws have come to this." I pressed my fingers against the emperor's temples and replied gently, "No matter how burdensome state affairs may be, there are procedures to follow. Your Majesty must take care of your health." He clasped my hand tightly. "What do you think of this, my beloved?" I smiled wryly. The harem must not interfere in state affairs. The emperor chuckled softly and lay down on my lap. "Can't you stop acting like your father like some old bookworm?" I quickly changed the subject. The state has its laws, and the household has its rules. Your Majesty asks me, but I don't know the answer. Who am I supposed to ask? The very next day, the Xie family was stripped of their property and imprisoned. Zhao Ying was rewarded for her report, and since she had put the greater good before her own family, she was granted a special permit to dissolve her marriage and return home. The rest of the Xie family were all sentenced to be executed after the autumn harvest. I saw Zhao Ying again the following year at the first-month celebration for the crown prince. By then, I had been elevated to the rank of consort Shu and was seated in the place of honor. Watching the crowd of well-wishers, Zhao Ying had a rosy complexion and showed no sign of being a widow. She curtsied to me and said, "I pay my respects to Her Royal Highness the consort. I heard that the Duke of Jhan's household was seeking a husband for her, and the scholar from a poor family whom they sponsored went on to make a name for himself in the imperial examinations. She is now the wife of the third-place winner." She placed her hand on her belly and looked at me with a gentle expression. "On behalf of my late husband, I have gathered his remains together with those of his concubine." I knew what she meant. In her eyes, Shenwan'er was, after all, my flesh and blood, and she wanted to use the prince's first-month celebration as an opportunity to sound me out. In this lifetime, Zhao Ying witnessed Xiaxing's cold-heartedness and callousness firsthand, and she herself severed her deep, unrequited love completely. The grievances between her and me from our past life seemed to have blown away like the wind. To be honest, I do feel a little guilty toward her. After all, because of our entanglement from a past life, I was the one who devised the plan involving the intoxicating perfume. I smiled. "I heard that you are expecting, so I am bestowing upon you this jade ruby to help ensure a safe pregnancy. May the child be healthy and well." She quickly stood up and accepted the imperial decree. Expressing her gratitude, Xiaxing and Shenwan'er are long gone. These days, my thoughts are entirely focused on the Shen family and the child. The road ahead is long. They're just 2 old acquaintances, nothing worth mentioning. That's the end of the story. Thank you all for reading. See you in the next one.